HR Unboxed with Natalie and Faye.
Hello, welcome to 2025 and welcome to the HR Unboxed podcast once again with Natalie and Faye. Hello, Happy New Year.
And to you too, Happy New Year.
How are you doing this afternoon?
Not too bad. It really feels good to be back in the studio again.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again. It has been a few weeks, but we're going to hit the ground running for 2025 because we have a very juicy episode today, which is the one HR doesn't want you to know about. So what are we going to be talking about today?
So we've actually asked some of our listeners to write in to us to see what it is that they want to hear from Faye and I, and they came back with some pretty interesting confessions that they don't want their own HR teams to know about, and we thought, well, that make quite a good fun episode, so here we are.
So I have these confessions. These have been in sealed envelopes. These are top secret, and the only person that knows the identity of these is Natalie and the person that wrote them, because this has been done in complete confidence. We're not going to give any clues away as to who has written these, but these are genuine confessions from real people in somewhere in the local area. Can we say that much?
Actually, some of them are all over the country, really? So they could be anywhere. They walk among us.
Global juiciness. So we'll read out what they've had to say, and then we'll have a chat about it and see how common these are, or if it's just a couple of isolated weirdos, or if this is something that is systemic in our society today, and we need to be aware of this.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm seeing from your faces that some of this is going to come as no surprise to you two, because you deal with this stuff day in, day out. You see the worst of humanity in your jobs, but you can still be shocked by some of these things, can't you?
I think we're more shocked about how bold people can be when it comes to the work environment. It's like there's no boundaries between their personal life and their work life. So the first part that you said, where nothing can really surprise us, I don't think it can. I think we're shocked that people have done these things, but we're kind of not surprised that it's happened, if that makes sense. So we have a very unique job.
Okay, I'm excited about this. So here we go with confession number 1. Okay, dear Natalie and Faye, I have a major crush on my boss and I don't know what to do. I've fancied him for ages and sometimes I think he likes me back.
Oh no.
I want to send him pictures to get my hint across to him, but I'm worried I could get fired. I don't think I can hold it in any longer and it's driving me crazy. Please help. And we will call that individual
Miss A.
I was going to say Jeff. I don't know. It's not clear whether
it could be anybody.
It could be anybody. So, what do we think about secret, so far unrequited office crush?
Oh gosh, I think this happens more often than we probably anticipate. I think, even if it's not management or one of the team fancying somebody of senior management or that of the boss, I think this could just be colleagues to colleagues, but I think fancying people in the workplace is a thing.
Well, this example, it's their boss, so that's the power dynamic going on, and this is the person worried about what will happen if it all plays out, and it could go in a few different directions here. But I think it's common because you spend so much of your time at work, and I'm watching Severance at the moment, which is brilliant. I recommend this. It's all about people where they have no recollection of their office work when they get home, and vice versa, and they put this thing in their heads so that they go to work and it's like a whole different version of them that goes to work. Then when they get in the lift at the end of the day, they go straight to the next day and they don't remember any of being at home. And then there's a lot of it's brilliant. It's really good.
I'm going to watch that. That sounds quite good.
I think it would be of particular interest to an HR perspective. You probably break all the rules doing this, but you can see why when you spend so much time at work, relationships and infatuations and flirting and stuff is basic human nature, surely.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that I've dealt with. I mean, I'm sat here and I'm thinking, well, I'm hardly one to talk because I have actually dated one of my bosses before. So, it's one of those where you think, actually, is this because they are working quite close proximity? I don't know what their role is, so it's quite difficult to to tell, but I'm assuming from the way that that's worded that they work very closely together, whether, you know, we see it quite often with assistants and people that are, you know, possibly... so that they're working quite closely together, so you can assume that those sort of relationships form. But when they're the boss, they have to be so careful with how you have to manage that relationship with people, because little things could be misread. Like, this person is bold enough to say, I'm quite prepared to send them a picture, and from a HR perspective,
they don't say what they're sending a picture of, though. That's left.
And that's the worry.
So yeah, I mean, it seems like these feelings are quite, you know, intense for this person, perhaps. But
I think it's risky, because it's very hard to know if you're imagining it, because when you're friends with someone at work, it can get misconstrued, because you know, you might smile at them, and they might, when you're looking for clues that somebody feels the same way, those tiny little details you get fixated on. You start, you know, oh, they put a kiss at the end of their text message, they're clearly into me.
We do get that a lot, actually. Kisses on the end of messages or emails and things like that, and the difference in communication between the generations as well. So what one person might find appropriate, another will find inappropriate. And from a HR perspective, it's that, you know, you can't be inappropriate at work. There's legislation in place to protect from that. So if this person does go ahead and send whatever picture it is, which they've not disclosed what that picture is, if they do send something like that, then they are at risk of potentially facing some disciplinary action without being too HR-y about it. That's where this could potentially go. So it is risky, and we see it with apps like WhatsApp and Snapchat, but also we've had a case with TikTok as well. So yeah, for any employers out there that are hearing this, then definitely make sure you've got your ducks in a row and that you've got the right policies in, because then they could be liable for that employee's actions, whether they have control over it or not. We're at a point where people will choose when they bring that issue as an employment one. So we have to be very careful with how it's managed.
And then I think, looking at this from the other perspective, from the boss, if you get a sudden message from one of your subordinates with an unusual picture, and they're kind of saying, oh, do you want to go out for a drink this weekend? Here's what I'm planning to wear in detail. How should you react to that? Because it puts you in a really awkward position, doesn't it?
Oh, I think it makes it incredibly awkward, especially because you know, you've got to turn up to work the next day. I mean, you've got to think what that's going to look like for you and your role. You're there to do a job, and then when you've obviously made your feelings clear and you know your boss has got their message, what's that going to feel like for you? You've got to think about that awkwardness, because it's only going to go one or two ways. I mean, your boss might take you into a room and say, this is really not appropriate. I don't know, does he have a wife? It's all those things, girlfriend, partner, they're all things to consider, because that is just not appropriate. But then also you've got to work day to day with this person, see this person. How are you going to feel?
I think that's why it's so important how you deal with it as a boss. And I think by being kind and taking someone to one side and saying, look, this isn't going to happen. I don't want this to be awkward. Can we just pretend this never happened and move on? And then I think it helps give a bit of closure. The worst thing is just ignoring it and sweeping it under the carpet and pretending that the text message didn't arrive, which might work, but it's still going to leave the question hanging, I think.
It could, and it might lead to more pictures come in.
Maybe I wasn't clear.
You know, it might get a lot worse. And so I definitely think you need to address that situation, especially in a workplace. You don't have to go through all the formalities to do so. As you mentioned, Chris, just take them aside, and if that's just something you're not into, and just make that clear. But I think on it said something, I think he likes me back. You know, has there been some instances where that management line is, we don't know.
I don't know, this is just after Christmas as well, so did something happen? Did something go down at the Christmas party? Refer back to previous episode.
But this is so common, isn't it? And unfortunately I've seen some of these pictures, and I've advised some of these, not in this case, but I have advised bosses on how to handle this situation directly, because they do genuinely feel uncomfortable. And sometimes if they're shown themselves to be kind, or they show themselves to be vulnerable, which is actively encouraged through leadership forums, then they're going to be in a situation where they could be uncomfortable. And the reason that those managers approached me, they're both female and male, to be honest, and they've both said to me, Natalie, I just feel really awkward about it, and how do I have that conversation with them? And some of the conversations we have as HR professionals are uncomfortable, and what we have to do is to try and teach them to be comfortable in delivering those uncomfortable messages. So it's a tough one. I understand that they seem quite into this person, but just don't do it. Keep it professional, I think, is how we would stick to that.
Advise that.
I mean, if they befriend this person outside of work and they become friends that aren't just colleagues, and then then it kind of moves on to the next level, that's kind of a bit better, isn't it, than it's just somebody sending a message to their boss out of the blue.
Otherwise, like you said, they could be quite shocked at what they receive. So if a natural friendship is there, I mean, all relationships are built on friendships, aren't they? And I can't remember what the statistic is now, but a lot of people meet their husbands, their wives, partners, etc. at work. So we don't want to be killing everybody's, Valentine's.
No, but there's a lot of apps around now that can also help. So don't feel like you just have to go with people that you've met through work, and especially if you don't do much outside work. If you literally just go to work and come home and watch telly and go to sleep, it's hard to feel like you're actually meeting anybody.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we move on to confession number 2 now?
Now we'll recover from that one.
Confession number 2. I booked a holiday, but I could only get 7 days of my 14-day trip authorised. I went anyway. I faked a sick note by getting one off the internet, and my bosses are none the wiser. I feel much better getting that off my chest. Whoa, this is a real confession. They've got away with it. There we go.
Yeah.
Done deal.
They've got away with it.
Wow. I mean, do people... I guess you don't know how many people get away with it.
No, you don't. That's the thing, isn't it? You don't know, and that person you could have felt was actually genuinely ill. But if you've got people that go abroad, for example, I've actually seen fraudulent fit notes throughout my HR career, but mostly when people have been abroad, and Faye and I have actually handled cases where people have been abroad to have surgery, and then have come back with certificates that cover that period, but because it's not always written in English, people just accept it on face value, so they don't know what it is, and they're like, oh, we're really sorry you were poorly while you were away, do they suddenly have really shiny teeth when they come back? We have had a couple, haven't we? Because that's so hard on the team as well. And
I think as well, if you in some instances, people then might go to their boss or go to their manager and say, I've got this holiday, I want to take these days, and then as goes, it's not all approved. Oh, what can I do to get through that? Because I really am going to go on this holiday. I'm going to be sick, because as HR professionals, it's not for us to question the validity over somebody's sickness. We're not medical professionals to do so. However, when somebody has made you aware that their idea is to go on a holiday, so some might have been part booked, then the rest is taken as sick, you can't help but question.
It's suspicious, but they might have got ill on holiday. They might have got food poisoning or something. That would be my excuse. I got awful food poisoning on holiday.
Excuse, yeah, no, absolutely. And this is why, it absolutely depends on that fit note. I mean, to not have seen it, I don't know how pretend it was, was there any stamps, what type of dates, what type of information were on it, but it's not cool. Let's not use sickness absence as your way of having more annual leave in a year.
How common is it for HR to phone up the doctor and check that it's a real sick note? Especially if somebody's just got back off holiday and they've given you a sick note that they've suddenly mysteriously had exactly 7 days of illness after the 7-day, 2-week trip.
So what happens in that case is that if you produce a sick note, I'm not sure what it looks like in this case, but I can tell you examples that we've managed, and one of which is that we'd have the sick note, but then it would cover the entire duration of that holiday. So what would happen from an employer's perspective is that they would then mark that entire period off as sick and not part holiday, part sick. If it's down the middle and it does cover just 7 days, because people are able to self-certify for a period, and then what they'll do is they will then have to get a fit note from their GP to cover any further time that they might have off. So yeah, it's quite common practice. So if employers have enhanced sick pay, for example, then what is likely to happen is that people will then say, oh, well, I've got this period of sickness that I can take throughout the year and I'll be fully paid. So what I'll do is I'll use my holiday and then I'll use periods of sickness. But they're getting quite savvy about it. So they'll book their holiday in the usual way and scatter that throughout the year. And then if they feel like some time off, then what they'll do is they'll just be sick for other periods of the year. So, you know, a lot of employers want to be generous and they want to look after employees, but these systems can be taken advantage of. Yeah, and it grates some of the other employees up the wrong way as well. So sometimes we get calls from employees, we don't advise employees obviously, but when they do ring through to us, they're like, well, I'm not very happy about this. And you'll see it on forums as well. I'm not happy because Dave is constantly off sick and I'm sat here and I'm carrying Dave's work. So you can see the impact. So even though your colleagues might not say it to you, but that employee might be sat there thinking, well, it's not my fault that you guys aren't taking advantage of it either. That's not my problem. So there does, so if there's any thought going into company sick pay schemes and things like that, it does have to be very well thought out, and maybe manage it on a rolling 12-month period as opposed to it being from January to December, because then you can establish any patterns. I mean, bank holidays are a favourite. Easter is also a favourite, as well as Christmas. So, some companies are able to put leave embargoes in to stop people from taking periods of leave throughout the year. For example, if it's peak season and they're in hospitality, it might be that July is a no-go because everybody is coming out and spending money and things like that. Good for the economy, but from the employee's perspective, they can get quite worn out from long hours and things like that. So you do have to be mindful about how you plan these periods, and a lot of employers neglect to do that and end up paying through the absolute nose for it, and they're wondering, well, what's hitting the bottom line? It's your holidays and your absence. So have a look at those things and see how you can make it work a little bit better. So Faye, I've been really busy the beginning or the start to this year by managing and getting their diaries and everything organised. It sounds a little bit odd, but we're actually being able to save businesses money by doing it. It's quite a challenge trying to manage each case individually, but when you look at it, like Faye said, we can't make judgment. But if any employers are listening and they're like, well, I need a doctor's report, we wouldn't recommend them going to a GP. One, because they'll only tell you what the employee wants you to know, and they're fully within their rights to do so. But if you go to an occupational health person, they work on behalf of the company to identify, well, actually, is there anything there that needs to be accommodated? Are there any needs there that are required? Because the amount of cases we've dealt with where employers will say, oh, but this person will take dyslexia as an example. We've got all of this dyslexia software and everything else. It might work for one person, but it might not work for every person. So the employer is at risk of putting the wrong adjustments in, which is, one, very expensive, and two, if they have to unpick it all, that could then leave them open to a claim. So we do have to be very mindful about what we're putting in place.
Yeah, obviously you wouldn't be having time off sick with dyslexia, that kind of... No. Generally, you can work through it. Do you know what I'm picking up from this confession is no remorse. There's no feeling of guilt. It's more glee that they've got one over the company. And do you know why I think that is? Because they made a perfectly reasonable request to have a couple of weeks off on holiday. It was turned down, and they said, well, I've got no choice. You've left me with no alternative than to fake the sick note, so I got away with it. Ha ha. Do you think it's partly the company's fault then for not being flexible enough with holiday entitlement?
I mean, reading from this, I'm just recapping over. Nothing on there suggests why. So why the company? So there's some reasons why, you put your annual leave request forward, maybe a day or two to come back from your manager, you wait for your approval before booking anything, because, you're still liable for then the cost of whatever that hotel, travel, transport, whatever that looks like. So wait for your approval. Now, there's some reasons why then it might be declined, and that could just be because another team member or a couple of team members are off at the same time. We have some clients that put in that only 3 of a team can be off in the same sort of time frame, because otherwise it just falls apart. So that could have happened. So where 2 other team members off, is that why that person got declined? Did they come in last because it's first come first served basis? Another reason, operational needs. Did you have to be there? Was there a deadline for something? Was there a project going on? Because I don't know enough facts behind why the decline was put in place, I can't sit here and say it's the company just deciding. I think so many companies are really accommodating, and of course they're going to accommodate where they can to allow for everybody to get the time off that they need. But if you've got an influx of about 10 people in a big office scene setting that all want the same kind of week off, what do? Do you let them all, or is a chunk of them going to get a decline? But that to me then isn't the company's fault.
Yeah, it's not really clear, is it? It might just be the company being mean.
It
just
could
saying
be.
you can only ever have a week
be.
off. No one's ever allowed 2 weeks. But I think as long as, you're consistent and people know that when they take the job up, that's, that's how it is.
I'd be intrigued to know more about why. Why for the decline? Why did your 14 days not get approved, for your trip? So a bit more information we could better advise on.
But it's a big risk, isn't it? Because the penalty for faking a sick note and forgery, surely that's gross misconduct, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately I've had a couple of these where it was so obvious that they'd actually put stickers over a previous fit note, and I can understand it.
Photocopied it with the Tipex.
That's it. I haven't seen a bottle of Tipex in years.
I know, I used to be a master forger at school. With sellotape and Tipex I could recreate any document.
If you want any forged documents, Chris is your guy. Not an advertisement.
I can only do black and white though.
I'm a one-trick pony. I can only do black and white. It's really... It's a mixture of different things, isn't it, when we're looking at these things, and I don't think I could be surprised, but the cases that I've handled have been treated as gross misconduct, because there was varying reasons behind it. I obviously can't talk about, but there's been some pretty extreme situations. The weirdest story that I've ever had is that somebody told me that their father had passed away, and he forgot that he had told this lie.
And then did he come back to life? Did he ring up?
His dad came and picked him up from work, and everybody was sat there going, "Oh my
it's
God,
a miracle.
I'd seen a ghost." And I said, "Is everything all right?" And they're all just pointing out the window.
Like with their mouths open. Yeah. Like some kind of movie.
Yeah, they're all stood there and they're like, "We thought he had died." So, everyone had actually rallied around this employee and got them a sorry for your loss card, and, bought him lunch and tried to look after him. And he was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot I told you that. I did lie about it." He was actually very honest in the end, because there's nowhere for him to go with it. When your dad is dropping you off outside
I'd be like, "No, that was my stepdad. That wasn't him. That wasn't the one that died." No, did I say that? I meant stepdad. Yeah. There's always, you can always talk your way out of it.
Well, how many parents and grandparents do you have? Yeah, we've seen our fair share of all of that. But there's not really. I'm the same as you, Faye, on this one. I'd be interested to know why they fake the sick note, but employees and employers both have an obligation to make sure that they're getting adequate breaks, because we actually see the flip side of that, where people won't take any holiday and then they get burnt out and things like that, and it's really serious. So if you are listening, do make sure you're taking adequate breaks throughout the year, because you absolutely need it.
Okay, on to confession number 3. Here we go. I've been in my job for over 10 years. The benefits are good, but I hate the job itself and my colleagues are dull. I've wanted to leave and go elsewhere, but I'm doing the bare minimum and my job just isn't stressful. Management don't notice, and I always maximise my entitlements with holiday and sickness, so I'm there as little as possible. I always get full pay, and I just can't get a better deal as they want the work putting in. Should I stay where I am, or should I go?
I'd like to say that that's an age-old question, but is it? I mean, I've heard of quiet quitting, you know, when somebody gets to a point where they've just absolutely had enough of that particular role and thinks, I need to go elsewhere. But this particular person seems to
I think it's a bit cruel to say that their colleagues are dull, because that's not really relevant to the question. No. But yeah, they've stuck it out for 10 years, this boring job that they hate.
Yeah, it's a long time, isn't it? I mean, have they hated it for the full 10 years? Or is it a case of... I mean, they say that they can't really get a better deal elsewhere. So...
Did you nearly choke on your coffee?
It was that. And then I had the clash, should I stay or should I go in my head? So, I do... like you say, we've heard of quiet quitting. We're aware that it exists. But this is just a different level in terms of that people aren't really... It sounds like this guy or person or whoever it is isn't being managed. I don't know what sort of job that they do, but, you know, it's one of those where you're sat there thinking, well, you're getting a really good deal where you are. So, and work is just something that pays the bills to some people. So yeah, I can kind of understand where they're coming from, but I do think that if they are feeling that way, then maybe they should be looking at, well, what options do they want? What is it that they actually want? Because whilst a job in isolation won't make you happy, it's about your circumstances and everything else. You've got to question, is that person actually happy doing what they're doing, or is it a case of that, you know, they're at a bit of a crossroads in their life perhaps where they do feel like, actually, I do want to change, but am I going to get the same where I'm going, or am I going to be challenged? I really don't know.
I don't think they're happy. I think it's a cry for help.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that, doesn't it? So, but it does feel like that they're kind of being overlooked, perhaps, from the tone of that. I mean, I'm only assuming there's no tone, obviously, to email messaging and things like that, but it does sound like that they don't really want to be there straight away, but also that management aren't really taking any notice or anything. So, yeah, I think that's a question for their management, is to make sure that they check in with their employees a bit more.
You'd think if they're getting some kind of annual appraisal or process, that this is the kind of thing that would come up, that they'd say, yeah, I'm very happy with the pay and the conditions, but I don't feel challenged. Can you make my job a little bit more interesting for me? But that doesn't sound like it's ever happened.
No, people, when they have their annual appraisal, a lot of the time they want to get in that room and out of it as quickly as possible. And this is, in one of our earlier episodes, why we said appraisals need to get in the bin, and you need to have a bit more of a bit more of a relationship with your employees, so that you get to know them, you understand what it is that excites them about their job, or what motivates them, what it is that they're looking for in terms of professional development and things like that. So when you're faced with this employee has checked out, they have checked out, and I don't think anything that they do is going to be able to reel them back in and say, well, we've got this prospect or whatnot. It might be that they've been telling people what they want to hear during the course of that appraisal process, so that they get out of that room as quickly as possible. Likewise, the management might not be engaged with that type of model if they do have one. So realistically, what are you supposed to do? You need to actually, this is a management problem, and they're not really in tune with their employees and what they actually need. So that's a real concern. But
it might be the person's fault. It might be that they're just, you know, at a point in their life where they just can't be bothered with anything, and maybe even outside work they just don't feel like they've got much motivation. So maybe it's more of a mental health issue, that they need to kind of cope with whatever it is that's making them feel that way, that they're not finding the pleasure in the things that normally they get some satisfaction from doing. Or maybe it is just an incredibly boring, pointless job.
Yeah, I mean, we could either look and think that their job is become completely mundane, and the day-to-day. And sometimes, you know, not every day of going into anywhere you work is going to be all thrills and, you know, parties and nice
podcasts
coffees and
fun times.
Podcasts and fun times. You're not going to get that all the time. You just not. Sometimes you have to do the what I consider menial tasks, or the bits of admin that you just think keep creeping up. And, you know, so I completely understand that jobs can become quite mundane. But then there has to be that other side. There has to be the passion and drive to make your job more, to give you that purpose. I always say, you know, you've got to enjoy your job to some point, because you're a long time doing it. So you might as well make the most of it. So for this person that they're not, I mean, one thing that jumped out the most in this was that management don't notice that I do the bare minimum. That is a management issue, because if someone can scrape by just like coasting through their day to day, then why haven't they been challenged? Why hasn't that been picked up? Or are they just quite happy that a few boxes are ticked and they consider that to be that person's job done for the day?
It's quite hard when you've got a big team to notice the people that just come in every day, keep their head down, get the work done, don't cause any trouble, but they might be the kind of people that are writing these messages.
I think that, and I was thinking actually it's easier to hide, if you like, amongst a much larger team. So for my team, no one can hide, because we're a very small team, and if you notice, you know, Faye notices when I'm on a bit of a low day, and I notice if she's not having the best day, and we work together to be able to iron that out, whatever that looks like, whether we go for a coffee or whether we go for a walk around the block at lunchtime, just to relieve a bit of stress. But when you're in a small business, it's much more obvious if one of the cogs isn't in place as it would be normally. And I think that's why you can have these meaningful conversations and how you get to know members of your team. But when you're in large organisations, I can see how that would get lost quite quickly.
And I think there's going to be some bosses listening to this thinking, oh, I bet that was so-and-so that's written that message. I know who that was.
I feel seen.
Yeah. But sometimes you do get a feeling about somebody that you think, oh, I just wish they'd stop just doing the bare minimum and just going through the motions. Nothing I do seems to motivate them. Yeah. What can I do? And, you know, it might be there isn't anything that you can do. They're just difficult.
No, and I think going back to your earlier point, Chris, about the mental well-being side to it, you know, because there's not much other context around this. For one, how long it's been going on. So we know that obviously they've been in the role for 10 years. Wonderful. But then when did the checkout begin? Because as you mentioned, you know, this could be like their lifestyle at the minute. They could be checked out themselves, not from work, whilst that could be, they've said obviously their people are dull around them. I mean, that's subjective. I think there has to be that, you know, again, management or even colleagues to kind of look and see those signs of somebody kind of going into their shell a little bit. I mean, were they an outgoing person themselves? You know, they've referred to their colleagues being dull, but what's their personality trait? Are they bringing that conversation? I've got, do you know what? This has opened up more questions for me than what I'm able to answer. So, yeah.
It's very interesting, though, isn't it? That often the people that you find dull probably also find you quite dull. And it's more, it's not that they're dull, it's just that you don't have stuff in common.
Yeah.
And there's certain personality types that really just are never going to get on with each other.
Yeah, everybody's different, aren't they? And everyone has different hobbies. I mean, I love reading. I've always got my head in a book, but that's not for everybody. You know, it's horses for courses, as they say. But yeah, gosh, yeah, I do feel on both sides of this one. But like you, Faye, I have questions in my head that I would ask this person, but just rest assured for our viewers, we do send out, if anyone does write to us, we always send them back an email to, or if they've messaged us, just to, you know, for in the one of the cases we've had a couple where it does sound like a bit of a cry for help and things like that, then we will make sure that we send them relevant helplines if you know, for their welfare. So yeah, we are very, you know, caring about our audience, and we're very grateful for people engaging with the show. So yeah, we'll do what we can to support.
But the guy that was going off on a holiday and laughing about it, he's not going to get any helpful leaflets.
No, he's probably in Barbados right now, having the time of his life, which might be the name of a cocktail out there. You never know.
Yeah. And some selfie tips for confession number 1 as well. Here's a guide to taking the perfect selfie. Okay, right. Here's number 4 now. Finally, here's a bit of light-hearted, a light-hearted one. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. Hi, Natalie and Faye. Loving the show. When I worked at my last job, I was given the title of PA. One night, I caught a message where my boss thanked me for sourcing an idea of a day out treat for his wife. Stupid me replied while half asleep with YVW, meaning you're very welcome. Unfortunately, predictive text turned it on me, and I literally died when I checked in the morning that what my message actually said was uber sexual. I mean, and they left it all night before they could do anything. They just sent that to their boss. Wow.
I mean, I can only... we've got to have all been there. There's always going to be a time when predictive text has just come into play. You know what you want to say, but your phone says, actually, no, what we're going to do here is send this instead. It's all about proofreading, whether this be your email, a text message, if you are going to send something to management, your boss, even a colleague. Oh, gosh, read it and then
you can see how this would happen late at night where you're half asleep, and my phone always does it as I press the send button. It's always the last word I've written. As you press the button, it corrects it as it's sending it, and it shows you.
Makes no sense whatsoever. Now, I can't advise on this on 2 reasons. One, I know who exactly this person is, and she's a really big advocate of the show, and I love her to bits. But it's one of those where I'm just as bad. I can't advise on this because it's pot kettle black. And
is it uber sexual?
It's never uber sexual, but it's one of those where I might send Faye a message and then she's got a ton of kisses on the end, or so it's silly, isn't it? And Faye just she's fully, she can translate and understand fluent Ellis now, so it's fine. But it's one of those where you are in a rush, people are busy, and autocorrect just kicks in at always the wrong time. So I try not to use it, and I'm being a bit more mindful now about the quality of the text messages that I send. So I do apologise to anybody who's received a random message that makes no sense.
I think it could have been a lot worse. And
yes,
I think when you're sending things by text, there's a lot that can go wrong. Like when you're attaching photos, if you attach the wrong thing, or if you send it to the wrong person by mistake, can happen quite easily. When you think you're in one conversation, you're in a different one, or somebody's copied in on a WhatsApp group that you didn't realise they were a member of, and you're talking about them. It's a minefield, isn't it?
It is, and a lot of the issues and grievances that we get are actually attributed to messenger apps. So whether that's Facebook, WhatsApp, whatever messenger service is your preference, we do see it quite a lot. And they're like, did you see what they've sent to me? And I'm like, I can kind of see what that person's done, but it never looks good in writing. And of course, when there's no tone to these messages, then it can be misconstrued in a very wrong way. So whenever people ask us, is it okay to WhatsApp my boss to say that I'm not coming in today, or if I'm off sick? No, just call them. Always call rather than text.
I think also you don't know that the message has got through always. So it's always better to talk to somebody, because you don't know. There might be a little tick, but you don't know that they've definitely read it properly. No. Or for me, sometimes I just read the first line of a message and I think that's it, and then I don't bother opening it and reading the whole lot, and there's a lot more underneath.
No, I've never
because you get a preview.
Do you do that?
I mean, sometimes what I've done is I've kind of scanned it, but I'm not in a position to really read it or respond. And then
But like when it comes up in your inbox and you just get the little preview and you read that and you think, okay, I don't need to open that because I can see what they're saying.
Chris literally has 1 million unopened messages on his phone.
Yeah, guilty as charged. It's just there's too much. Life's too short.
The most important bit could have been at the bottom, Chris, not in that first line.
It usually is, and it's usually my wife as well. And that's the bit underneath the very funny. By the way, can you make sure you pick the kids up? And I haven't bothered opening it.
Oh, bless her.
Yeah. Never mind.
No.
Okay, brilliant. Well, there were some really juicy ones. And, if you have something on your mind, you can always get in touch and confess at any point, can't you?
Confess at any point. Crikey. It's one of those where it's been interesting being the opposite side, I guess, because normally we're advising business owners and things like that, but hopefully they find this episode quite useful, because then they can see what is actually going on that they don't see. I think the interesting thing is getting inside the head of your staff and then seeing it from their perspective, because a lot of the time you're just thinking, right, this is cut and dried, this person has just faked a document, it's gross misconduct. But I don't think anybody ever does something like that without having a reason. And people don't go to work and think, right, what can I do to be as naughty as possible today? They're not children. They woke up and chose destruction. No, I don't. I think you're right on that one. Nobody ever actually decides to do that.
2-year-olds are different. My little boy is just decided to throw his breakfast across the kitchen this morning just to be naughty. There was no rhyme or reason. That was just pure naughtiness. But you don't get that in the workplace normally.
I've never had someone throw their breakfast across the room, so that would probably shock me. Because I'm like, why would you waste a good bacon sandwich? I mean, other breakfasts are available, but we'll all agree that bacon sandwiches are the absolute pinnacle of breakfasts. So, I do think that there are some things that are kind of created by the environment that they're in. So it is up to employers to be in tune with those employees and find out what's going on. I can't advise you on your breakfast incident this morning, Chris.
That wasn't the end of it either. I mean, this wouldn't happen in the workplace, but I'd spent so long getting him dressed, and then by the time I came downstairs with the other one, he'd taken all his clothes off and he was stood by the front door screaming and looking very unhappy.
I really hope that doesn't happen in the workplace, that comes across our door. Employee turns up, took all their clothes off. I mean, I haven't heard it yet, but there's still time.
Don't tempt fate.
Still time.
Oh God. Oh no, I haven't. I have had an employee streak down a hotel corridor once. But and that was
but that wasn't during working hours, was it?
No, that was at a conference event, and then they had drinks and stuff afterwards. So I was just going, it's always me, isn't it? I just attract trouble.
I got in trouble at a conference for flooding the hotel because I'd left the bath running and forgot about it.
Oh no.
And that was awkward.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
But that's the only time that I've really had a naked employee. I've had other instances with employees that are up to no good at work that shouldn't have been. 5 times I've caught people in the act at work.
Okay, and on that bombshell, five times.
That absolute disappointment.
Should we keep a tally during the podcast if that number goes up?
I'll let you know if there's any more recorded incidences. But no, it's always me, and I'm always in a situation. Oh God, not again. It does make you feel like I couldn't think of anything worse than work, to be honest. But there we go. Yeah.
Do you know what happened to me once? This really happened. This was at a radio station that I was working, and my boss came and she was female, and she said to me, "You need to go and have a chat with the DJ who's on air at the moment in the studio, because I've just walked behind him and he was watching adult material on the screen in the studio on the computer while he was doing his radio show." And I had to go in the studio and have a conversation with this guy who was unrepentant. And it was weird.
I wish I could be shocked at that, Chris, but I've actually had to have the porn at work chat. You might have to censor that word because a lot of places don't like it, but I've had inappropriate adult material conversations more times than I can count. Make sure your IT policies are up to date, and but please just don't bring it into the workplace, because it's awkward on both sides of the table.
No, not just in digital form, in any format.
Any format, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I when I first started my working career, I still remember the lads mags pictures being put up on staff room walls and things like that. I mean, that
used to be common. It's like every garage you went in, they'd have a calendar on the wall, wouldn't they? And it was it was normal, and just times have changed.
Absolutely. It really has, isn't it? So no inappropriate material at work, please.
Even newspapers, though, you still get newspapers with page 3. Is that a problem in the workplace? Should you censor the newspapers?
No, I think they've gone digital now.
Can't have really come across it. Not even in kind of.
Maybe I haven't seen a newspaper for a few years.
No, I haven't.
No. I can't remember the last time I bought a newspaper, being honest with you. A lot of things can be all read online, and I think it's that desire for instant information, isn't it, that we see when it comes to the news and things like that. You can't really escape it. So yeah, there you go. It's gone digital. No newspaper or page 3 incidences to report. No.
There we go. Okay, so what are we going to talk about on the next episode of HR Unboxed?
Oh gosh, so the next episode, we have been asked for this quite a lot, and they want us to talk about grievances at work.
Okay. So
yeah, it's something we get asked a lot about to advise in our day-to-day, but we want to kind of pull it apart and show people what the grievance process is actually about, rather than what people think it's about, because it often gets confused with disciplinary. So
grievances are situations where the employee has got a beef with the workplace, and they raise a grievance, and then you as HR are helping the company decide how they're going to deal with that grievance.
Yeah.
Interesting. And there's a lot to talk about there. So we're going to be digging deep into that, having a deep dive into grievances on the next episode.
Yep. So we'll call it the one with the grievance. So let's
one with the grievance.
We can all have our therapy session then.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who's confessed and got that off their chest, and all of the ones that were too explicit to mention on the radio as well.
Yes.
So, yes.
There were a few of those.
We will see you on the next episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.